100 protesters were killed in Kyiv's Maidan Square in February of last year. Those close to the so-called Heavenly 100 are learning to live without them.
I remember everything. His every gesture, every step, smile, every phrase. It is difficult, but life goes on. We have children. We need to live. We need to fight.
Ihor Kulchitsky survived last year's crackdown on protesters, but his father Volodymyr, a general in the Ukrainian army, was killed several months later when pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine downed his helicopter.
God gave him the death of a warrior. It means that had to happen. What is important is that this should not be for nothing.
Despite last week's truce, rebels continued to fight for control of key territory in eastern Ukraine. Civilians in those areas report living in fear, hunger, and cold.
Up there, a woman was killed. All they found was pieces of her body below. 14 people were killed.
Russia's annexation of Crimea and fighting in the rest of eastern Ukraine have prompted more than 1 million people to leave their homes. The United Nations Food Agency announced Thursday it is boosting its aid for Ukraine.
We're scaling up our operations in Ukraine to reach probably about 190,000 people in the coming weeks, because the needs are growing as people are still having to flee their homes and they're living in very difficult places, in shelters with other families. Our colleagues recently have been to see people who are living in a railway station in a sleeping wagon.
The World Food Programme says food prices in the region have risen dramatically, up to 30% for milk and bread, and 70 to 80% for meat and cheese. Some people, like this mother in the eastern town of Kramatorsk, have depended on food vouchers for months.
Can it be that a country that was as rich as ours was before cannot feed itself and is dependent on others for help?
The World Food Programme hands out food vouchers in relatively stable areas where food can be purchased. In areas closer to the front line, it provides traditional food rations.
It's a drop in the ocean. The needs are great. Right now we're prepositioning food, hoping that the ceasefire will hold and we're able to push food to over 60,000 people near the front lines.
Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has called for international peacekeepers to enforce the shaky ceasefire. Zlatica, Hoke, VOA News, Washington.